again. This is a Catholic Lady, and we are reading Great Line of God by Taylor Caldwell. This is Chapter 1, Part 3. Hillel had been angered at this dryly amused dismissal of his story, and so had changed the subject. He had also felt foolish and demeaned. He spoke of it no longer to anyone, but he thought frequently of the star. Some fear, some reticence, had prevented him from writing others in Jerusalem about the star, notably his relatives, for he did not wish to be disillusioned. This also surprised him, for he was a man who deplored illusions in others and had a gentle disdain for them. But it had been prophesied ages ago that the Messiah of the house of David himself would be born in Bethlehem. However, if this were so, why had there been no shouting angels, no universal trumpets of the heavens, when that star had appeared, and why had not the world been swept up in rejoicing splendor? The Messiah should surely not be born in obscurity, for his throne was on a holy Sion, the prophecies related, and he would not be born as the least of men, the King of Kings. Several years had passed, and there had been no other sign. Still Hillel could not forget the star, though he often wondered at the convulsion of emotion which had seized his heart on reading Hannah's letter. Even to this very evening in his garden, the surge of mysterious rapture was as fresh and urgent as ever. It may all have been but a delusion, the fantasy of drunken men in a Roman tower who had observed it, or a wife's ardent desire that her firstborn son be duly recorded by heaven. But still his stubborn and devoted heart denied all this, and he did not know why. Perhaps, he thought, an illusion which affirms joy is better than a reality which denies it, or perhaps the presence of joy attests to its verity. As Hillel stood in his garden tonight, he heard a sudden loud cry, and he started. The cry broke the smiling silence, like the abrupt command, sharp and authoritative. It was not for a few moments that he realized that it was the voice of his little son, passing in the arms of a nursemaid through the colonnade. Still he was shaken. The infant's voice had reminded him of his own father, imperious and uncompromising and firm, even didactic, impervious to thoughts, scornful of hesitation. It was absurd, he thought, as the silence was resumed. A mere suckling, and the formidable old man had ruled his household with the mere power of his appalling voice. For one moment, Hillel contemplated the thought that his father had been reincarnated in his infant son, Saul, and then he chuckled. How delightful it would be to smack the buttocks of a soul which had terrorized wife and sons and daughters in its former life. Perhaps, in a measure, that would be justice. He returned to his prayers, and even the noisy birds were still. He repeated the words of David with deep longing and reverent joy. O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land, where no water is, to see your power and your glory as I have seen you in the sanctuary, as I have seen you in the sanctuary. Because your loving kindness is better than life, my lips will praise you, and thus I will bless you while I live. I will lift up my hands in your name. He looked now at the fanged mountain shapes far beyond the valley, the fantastic monuments which acute imagination could distort into the likenesses of monsters, of lurking dragons, of bastions and towers and spires and temples, of pediments and columns standing alone, of twisted arches and carved walls, all hewn of scarlet stone, seemingly burning in direful fire against a sky of the most intense incandescent blue. The setting sun thrust them into frightful relief, so that they appeared to be marching on the rich valley in menace and terror, striking the river Cydnus into the semblance of a wide highway of flame. Hillel had seen this 1,000 times or more, but it never failed to fill him with a premonition, an amorphous fear, a heavy melancholy of soul. Now he heard Deborah chattering with her female Greek and Roman friends, and her voice was vivacious and trilling, the voice of a happy and complacent child. He shook his head a little as if in reproof, but in some way that trivial and light-hearted sound consoled him, and he knew not why he was consoled. He looked below the mountains now, and saw Tarsus in the blazing river, a city of broken golden fragments, struck with crimson. He had not been born in that city, but had come to it as a child with his parents. Yet he loved it, as he did not love Jerusalem, the desecrated, the alien, the lost, the land not only occupied by military conquerors, but worse still, occupied by sons who had destroyed the heart of the holy city out of wantonness and casual cynicism, and faithlessness and abandon. When a city was poor, it was occupied by faith and industry and hope. When it became rich and affluent, evil entered, and the city was lost. "How I have mourned thee, Jerusalem," Hillel murmured, and entered his house, with his head bent and his sadness on him again. "I assured you, Deborah," a young Roman matron was saying to her hostess in the calm of the brilliant evening, "that the metal from the Delphi would cause you to conceive a son." "I wear it next to my heart," said Deborah Bathsheba. She hesitated. Still, he could have been a more comely countenance. And that is the end of chapter 1.